All right, here we go. OverDrive off and running. TSN 1050 on the TSN app, your home smart speaker, and up on TSN 2 all afternoon. Brian Hayes, Dave Feschuk of the Toronto Star. What's happening, Dave?
What happened to summer, Hayes? What's going on out there?
Isn't that nasty today? Oh. It was nasty. It was so windy. It was cold. It was raining at one point. It felt like October this morning.
Weird, man. Just weird.
Yeah, yet it's supposed to turn and be crazy hot this weekend. Which really doesn't make sense. Yeah, you got the King's Plate on Sunday. I'm going to the King's Plate. I can't wait to be there.
You and the Grappler, apparently.
The Grappler's going to be there in his best, probably the wedding suit. I'm assuming the Grappler will probably double down on the wedding suit.
Top hat, perhaps?
Possibly a top hat.
It's the King's Plate.
It is the King's Plate. Like I ran into Jennifer Hedger yesterday, and Hedge and Dutchie, they're going to host all of the coverage on CTV. Sunday afternoon, and Hedge is a veteran of the Queen's Plate, King's Plate, and she made it very clear. She said, you cannot overdress.
No.
You can't. It's impossible. It doesn't matter how you show up. You will probably not be the sharpest dressed individual. So I'm figuring out what I'm going to wear. My wife's got what she's going to wear, but last time I checked, they're saying like 30 feels like 37 or something crazy. So it may be a Lucas Glover situation. Like I'm going light khaki pants, and I need to watch myself on Sunday.
I think you do. I'm concerned.
You
have I noticed the U.S. Ryder Cup team unveiled their uniform for the Ryder Cup, and I think the thing that Lucas Glover needs to understand is they had moisture-wicking pants. Moisture-wicking. You see what I'm saying?
Very important stuff. Very important technology. You notice that the U.S. Ryder Cup gear looks the exact same every 2 years?
Pretty much.
It never changes. Like, I know there's a different variation, and I'm not buying any of it anyway, so I don't care. Like, I'm not buying any Ryder Cup stuff, but it looks the exact same every 2 years.
It has lately. I think they got, like, Ralph Lauren or something.
Yeah, it is.
And, like, that's a conservative designer, right? They always go with the blue, the navy blue and red, super conservative, preppy boy, country club kind of look, right?
Yeah.
That's the Ralph Lauren thing. But they've had some ugly ones in the past. Remember those crazy baggy pants they had with those, the shirts with all the different graphics on them, and they've had some weird.
They've had some terrible looks.
Weird looking looks.
You're right, terrible looks, and can change the whole vibe around your team. If you got a bad uniform, it just immediately you get associated with, I don't know, dark thoughts or ugly. Like, it's like you're going to lose somehow because you didn't dress to impress. You don't look the part.
And for fans, like if you're just watching a tournament, you get it's easy to get turned off by guys like Lucas Glover. Obviously, was the ultimate example of like the entire golf watching population saying, "What is this guy doing out there?" As great as he was playing, it took away from his dominant run. Right, he's winning back-to-back tournaments, and all anybody can talk about is his terrible choice in cotton khakis.
Right. It was a complete distraction.
No sweat-wicking capabilities in a world where pretty much every bit of golf clothing I've bought in the last 20 years has got sweat-wicking capabilities. Isn't that sort of standard?
It's mandatory.
Lucas Glover missed the memo.
That's right. Yeah, today was not the case. Today was like multi-layered. You're in pants, sweater, maybe a jacket at some point. I don't know what was going on today, but it's all good because, again, it's supposed to turn this weekend. It's supposed to be nice this weekend here in Toronto. The King's Plate on Sunday is supposed to be beautiful. It's already sold out. We got Eddie Olczyk coming up, Eddie O, in about an hour, and we will ride that wave with Eddie. We got the full capping situation here with Eddie. We'll ask him what kind of ponies we should be looking at.
Oh, yeah.
Do we like the favors? Any long shots that are going to be up at Woodbine that maybe we should take a sniff at? So Eddie's coming up in about an hour.
You and Grappler will be making notes.
Absolutely. Like, it's a high priority. There's so many different races going on. It's not only like the main King's Plate, but there's a lot of different ponies that'll be racing. So, yes, the Grappler and I, and I'm sure many other people who will either be there on Sunday or watching on Sunday and tracking it need to know what we can expect this weekend. So Eddie Olczyk in about an hour. Jays are back in action tonight. But some interesting lineup decisions here tonight because you're in Cincinnati. Cincinnati's a good up-and-coming team. The Jays have 40 games left. They're a half game up on Seattle.
Yeah.
So I think they need to go 25-15, probably at a minimum. That gets you to 92 wins. But
Seems that way. Yeah.
That's dicey, right? Even that's like right on the line. And Seattle's a good team, and you're on the road here. And they're not going to activate Bichette until tomorrow, which we had heard was possibly going to be the case. I understand the reasoning behind that, but he DH'd a couple days ago. He played one game against Buffalo yesterday. He hit well. He looks healthy. I believe he's ready to go. He's in his mid-20s. Like, get him back in the lineup tonight. And furthermore, George Springer is not in the lineup tonight.
Yeah.
They were off on Monday, off yesterday. They're off again on Monday, and George is not playing. So if Springer's out and then you don't activate Bo Bichette, yes, Kiermaier's been activated. I believe he's in the lineup tonight. But something's up here.
That's worrisome.
Like, what's up with Springer coming off an off day and he's not playing tonight?
Yeah, and I mean, every indication was Bo was going to play tonight as well, right?
Right.
I mean, and so it makes you wonder what's going on there, because Bo did look pretty good from the highlights I saw out of the Buffalo, right? He looked like he was running well, looked like everything was in tune, but which led you to believe that tonight would be the night. The fact that it's not, and the fact that Springer is being held out after, as you point out, 2 off days in 4 days. I mean, if you're not ready to go after that, when are you going to be ready to go?
Yeah, George, it actually feels like it's been a good run for him without getting injured, right? Like, ever since he got here, it seems like big injuries have been lurking. And the Jays have been relatively healthy. You know, yes, Bichette was out for a significant portion of time, I think 15 games. Obviously, Hyunjin Ryu was not available to you. But now you got Ryu back. Bichette's going to be back likely tomorrow. Kiermaier's been activated. Trevor Richards activated. Like, you got your roster here, right? Manoah's played himself out of it, but that's not based on injury. The Jays have been very lucky, knock on wood, but very lucky in terms of avoiding massive injuries over the course of the season, and assuming Springer's just got something nagging. And at this point, there's no reason to believe it's anything bigger than that. If it's just simply something nagging, fine. Maybe they're going to look at this week as basically a full opportunity mid-season. Well, not quite mid-season, but a little bit beyond that, to really reset for him. Off Monday, off Thursday, off Friday, maybe DHs tomorrow, off Sunday, off Monday. It's like, okay, a lot of time off, reset the engines here, and then it's go time when you get to Baltimore on Tuesday. But they've been healthy.
Yeah, they have.
They've been a healthy team. And again, assuming Bichette returns tomorrow, there's no reason to believe he won't. The reports have been out there that they were thinking of giving him the day off today. Again, I'm not sure why. It's not like he flew to the West Coast or anything from Buffalo to Cincinnati.
Yeah,
That's
it's not exactly
a long trip.
Long haul.
But still, he's out tonight. If he returns tomorrow, it's all good.
Well,
But,
look, I mean,
they got to gear up here.
And you can spin this really positively. I mean, whatever's lurking there with Springer, maybe the fact that Springer's taken some extended time off here tells you that, his struggles, as much as he's been in the lineup, maybe he hasn't been 100% healthy, and maybe there's something to that, and maybe a little bit of rest will do him good. But you weathered the storm without Bichette, right? You're 8-7 in the 15 games without him. Whatever happens tonight in Cincinnati without him, you're going to be a 500 team at worst without Bichette in 16 games. That's not bad, right? Considering how much of the load he's carried, leading the AL in hits. So, yeah, you can sort of spin a positive here, right? And say, look, you made it through a tough stretch. Like when the Yankees lost Aaron Judge for an extended stretch, the season was over, right? And I know it's a different situation. It was a longer absence for Judge than it was for Bichette, but it goes to show you, like, there's not many teams that can withstand the absence of the guy that drives their offense.
Yeah, and Bo has done that all year. He has been the man on this team, and I think it was actually only accentuated, even with what you just said. And you're right. You go 8-7 without your best player, that's going to go a long way. But a lot of that was pitching. A lot of that was defense and getting some clutch hits at certain times. Kevin Biggio's actually had a few big hits recently. Springer had some big hits over the course of those 15 games. But I think it actually elevated the status of Bichette, even though they went 8-7 without him, that he's so clearly the most locked-in hitter this team has. And so clearly the most dominant plate presence that they have. It's actually been one of those situations where when you lose somebody, you really do realize the value that they bring. And it's not that people were unaware of who Bichette was prior to the injury, but there were a lot of nerves there that when he pulled up short, basically rounding first, like he maybe blew something out in his mind.
Yeah.
And
You're right.
obviously that didn't happen. It's all good. 8-7, you bring Bo back in. There's no reason to believe Bichette will not step right back in and continue to roll. Again, it's AAA. It is what it is. But he hit really well over 2 days.
Oh, yeah. He
with the
looked great.
Bisons. He looked great. He was hitting the ball opposite field. I believe he had a home run yesterday.
Yep.
So, like, Bichette looks like he's ready to rock. And that's going to be a massive boost because, again, you got 40 games left, and you got a half-game lead on Seattle.
Yeah.
They're, 3 back at Houston, 5.5 back at Tampa still, which seems to be pretty consistent, and it has been for the better part of a month and a half.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they're just constantly 2.5, 3 back at Houston, 5, 6 back at Tampa. And if that's going to be the case and you're chasing one spot, we mentioned the Kings plate. Like, there's 2 horses coming down the stretch, man. Seattle's right there with you.
And Steve Phillips made a point in the morning show earlier in the week, which kind of resonated, is that if you're the Blue Jays, you can't be thinking about the Seattle Mariners. It's like the old Satchel Paige quote, don't look back, something might be gaining on you.
Right.
You got to be thinking about the Rays. Like, you talk about a team that hasn't been lucky with injury. Mm-hmm. They've had their share of injuries, and now they got the Wander Franco situation with their best player.
And he's done.
Under a cloud. Exactly. Under a cloud. And you wonder what that does to them. As much as they've been this incredible story of a franchise that always has a replacement part for the guy they lose to free agency or the guy they can't afford to pay, the supply has to end somewhere.
Yeah.
And they don't have and I'll tell you what, they may have a replacement level replacement for a lot of guys, but they don't have anything that's a reasonable facsimile of Wander Franco.
No. Like Franco and McClanahan are superstars.
Right.
Like Shane McClanahan is a pure horse ace, and he's done. And Wander Franco, who's out for a very different reason, a much more nefarious reason. Mm-hmm. And, as of now, I guess, I don't think he has a choice, but he has to just go along with what Major League Baseball is doing. As much as the union can support him, I don't think the union's going to support him much here.
Wow.
I mean, if the allegations are true and if the investigations become true, there's simply no defending him. We're talking something criminal at that point. And there have been reports all week suggesting we may never see him play again.
Yeah.
Like, period. Not the rest of this season. Like, he may never be a Major League Baseball player again. And with that being the case, and again, it's incredibly heavy and the details are really kind of difficult to go through. The fact of the matter is he's a stud. Like, he is a great player. And you take him out of that lineup, to your point, on top of the other issues they've had specifically in the rotation. It's almost a miracle Tampa's still in the position they're in.
Yeah.
And really it's because of the start they had.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
What did they go, 30-9 or something to start the season?
It was crazy.
And they've just been on cruise control ever since because they really have not been a great team for the better part of 3 months.
No, they haven't. And so that's why I think, Phillips' point was that you got to be thinking about gaining on those teams, not worrying about fending off the chasers. But I'll tell you what, man, like that third wild card spot is where you want to be.
Yes, it absolutely is.
That third wild card spot, it's the dumbest. Has there been a dumber playoff format than the one Major League Baseball has concocted in this situation, where essentially finishing in the third wild card spot is a massive advantage over finishing in the top 1 and 2?
Well, as of now, and the point you're making is they would play Minnesota in Minnesota. Best 2 out of 3 in Minnesota.
Sure.
But Minnesota is a 63-59 team.
Right.
And in large part, that's because they're playing the likes of Kansas City and Detroit and the White Sox all the time. It's one of those scenarios where you can't, in the moment, you can poke holes at it, clearly, which is happening here. Because if the playoffs were to begin today, obviously Tampa and Houston would look at each other saying, this is silly. Like, Houston, a 70-win team's got to go and play a 73-win team, and there's the Jays who were behind both of them. They get to go play a 63-win team.
Think about that.
Yeah, it is silly. And you see it in the NFL a lot too, right? Like, where the wild card team has got 12 wins and they got to go to the NFC South and play a team that has 8.
Sure.
But that's the nature of the system. Ideally, I think if you're Major League Baseball, your divisional winners are actually prominent teams.
Right.
And yet, in this instance, that's not the case because whoever comes out of the Central is going to come out based on default.
Yes.
Because it's just a terrible division.
Well, and now it's exposed the fact that since they've diminished the in-division schedule, you've gone from whatever it was, 19 games against your division opponents to whatever it is this year, 13-ish. You've essentially expose the Central, right?
Right.
Because they don't get as many games against the Central. And so now they got to go out and play everybody else. And guess what? Those other divisions are better.
So well.
It's not going so well. So, but I mean, if it could work out really well for the Jays, because essentially they will be sitting there playing the team that is the third seed in name.
Yes.
Because they're a division winner, the top three division winners, all three division winners become 1, 2, 3 in the seeding. But that third seed will essentially be the 8th best team in the American League if the playoffs began today.
Yeah, it's the best possible scenario you could get outside of winning your division and getting a bye into the divisional series.
Right.
Clearly, which at this point is going to happen with Baltimore and Texas. But yeah, exactly. Like, sure, you got to go on the road, but who cares?
Like, you look at this, you look at the Central. You talk about how the Jays have struggled against the American League East, and they have. You know, they've done a little better lately, but they're 11-23 against the East. But they're all 5 teams in the Central are sub 500 against the American League East.
Right.
I mean,
exactly.
Minnesota's 12-17. I mean, Cleveland's the closest. They're 10-12, but like Detroit's 5-20 against the East. Chicago and Kansas City are terrible against the East, and that's the danger of having a more balanced schedule when you've got a weak division, because that weak division is suddenly looking a lot weaker than it would have if you had the bigger in-division schedule that you had previously.
Well, even with as bad as the Yankees have been recently, and they've lost 5 in a row, there's a game under 500. They've got a negative run differential. They're a mess, and they're going the wrong way. Even with that being the case, if they're relatively healthy, they're better than Minnesota, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah.
And certainly Boston.
More dangerous.
More dangerous anyway in a 2 or 3 game series.
Especially if Judge is
playing
the game.
and Cole's pitching game 1, I'm taking the Yankees every single day of the week over Minnesota.
Exactly.
And yet the Yankees are going to finish with, I believe, a sub 500 record, and they will probably be miles behind other teams in the American League East, and they're going home. Again, I'm not shedding tears for the Yankees.
Nobody is. Wow.
But it is a sign of what's, is a true imbalance in terms of actual parity in the American League when you consider what's going on in the Central.
I mean, the only people shedding tears, I'm sure, are the folks who broadcast games nationally. Like Apple TV Plus has got Red Sox Yankees tonight. And does anybody care? Like,
it's a good, I mean, it speaks to the magnitude of the brands, though, and how important it is for those sports. Like Major League Baseball, especially with revenue sharing, like now the Yankees are still going to make their money.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Like the tickets are still going to be sold. The TV deals are lucrative. They're selling 1 million jerseys and hats around the world. Their brand is incredibly rich and lucrative. But if the Yankees are on the kind of precipice of really falling off for a few years, that's dangerous for baseball. And, the Red Sox have effectively been out of sight, out of mind for the better part of, 3 years now?
I know.
Like, they have not been much of a team. That is dangerous because, as you said, Apple TV, ESPN, Fox, like they want Yankees with a side of Sox as much as they can possibly get it.
Oh, yeah.
And if it's going to be an awful team, or if they're going to fall off a cliff here to an extent, it doesn't matter what the brand is. You got to have something that can back it up.
Oh, no doubt.
You got to be somewhat of a, I guess, entertaining team to watch them play primetime 18, 20, 25 times over the course of a year.
Hey, man, one of the big reasons they had that in-division schedule with the 19 meetings between all the division teams was Yankees-Red Sox.
Yankees-Sox, exactly.
Because the TV partners couldn't get enough of Yankees-Red Sox. And now it's like, well, this year, and maybe it's just, who knows how long these teams will be diminished, because the Yankees, I mean, it's as much as you say it's a down year, and it's remarkable. It's remarkable that Brian Cashman's been the GM since the late 90s, and he's never had a sub-500 team, and he's won 4 World Series. And, they're always there. And even last year when everybody in New York thought they were terrible, they made it to the ALCS, and got, albeit getting thumped by the Astros, but they still made it to the ALCS.
It's all relative. It is relative that they're a game under 500 and the sky is falling here. And they won 99 games last year, got to an ALCS. You do that in Toronto and you're getting a level of excellence, basically, for the team.
I was just saying that to the grappler. It's amazing how the standards in various cities are so different, right?
Right. Yeah, here you're renowned. You look at over the last 30 years, basically, since obviously the 92-93 World Series and then the 19 Raptors team. Like those are the three championship teams of the last, 30, 35 years. But I would say beyond that, the four most popular teams and seasons probably in Toronto would be the Leafs in 93-94 and the Jays in 15-16.
Yeah.
And the Leafs made it to the semifinals both years, didn't win, didn't make it to a cup final. And the Jays made it to the championship series both years, didn't win, didn't make it to a World Series, yet they're beloved.
Yes.
Right? And it's like you sit around the fire with friends and talk about, hey, remember the good old days when the Jays won Game 5 of the ALDS?
I know.
Like, that's the big moment. The bat flip is the big moment, and that's naturally the biggest moment of the past 30 years.
Yeah.
That was in the divisional series.
Yeah, for
You
sure.
put that in New York or Boston or L.A. with the Dodgers or now Houston with the Astros, they're like, that's nothing. We don't even remember who had a big home run in Game 5 of a divisional series.
I know.
We got we got World Series heroes here.
Exactly.
And
exactly.
it's just totally different.
It's totally different. It's amazing how it's so different. And look, I know there's like that problem in Toronto is like in hockey, the guys that won are so old now. Like we're not young and we didn't see him play, and
right.
But I do know, having spoken to those guys coming in and out of the alumni lounge down at the arena over the years, like they really take offense to the idea, or many of them, I should say, not all of them. Everybody sees it differently, but I do know several of them would express how they took offense to the idea that the Leafs were honoring players who didn't win Stanley Cups when they had multiple rings. And there's something to that. Like, there was a time when the standard was you got to win. You got to win to be remembered in this town.
It's just so removed.
But it's just been so far away.
It's so far removed.
Yeah.
And this is not exclusively a Leaf thing. Again, the Raptors got there in 19, obviously, and the Jays did in 92, 93, but that's 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Like, even the Jays runs it doesn't seem like that distant of a memory, but that's 30 years ago.
I know.
Right? And effectively, you've got two playoff moments of recollection that would be considered highlights that you can really attach yourself to in 30 years.
You're right.
And, beyond that, you've got a couple of wild cards. You got a COVID wild card. You got last year where we know what happened against Seattle. That's about it.
Yeah,
right? The Leafs got there in 99 and 02 as well, and those teams were revered. The Sundin era,
yeah,
for sure.
That was a fun era.
That was a very fun era. And they went there every year, and they won a ton of playoff rounds, and they were on the verge of winning. It wasn't an impossibility to believe they could. But it didn't happen.
It not unlike this current team, which probably let its best chances slip away already. Like that was their last chance before the salary cap, right? Like it was the teachers' pension plan era, and they were spending. And I remember Richard Petty saying, well, we have a war chest. We could probably spend more. And, Pat Quinn telling Richard Petty to shut up through the media because he shouldn't be talking like that. But, maybe they should have spent more. Maybe they should have gone Mike Ilitch and said, hey, man, we got to do it. This won't last forever. But it goes to show you how you can't really, say and anticipate when an era is going to end. And it's hard to know, when your best chance is coming until it's slipped by.
Right. Yeah, and listen, how maybe removed the brands of Toronto are from other brands in pro sports, where I think the Leafs should feel like they have an entitlement to be on the same stage as maybe the Yankees, as the Lakers, the Celtics, whatever it is, but they haven't pulled their own weight.
No.
They have these. You got to win to really get there. Yes, you've been around forever. Yes, you have a massive fan base. Yes, you sell out, you're worth a fortune, and there's a ton of interest. But you got to push it beyond to be in the same kind of stratosphere as those teams. Because you look at the Yankees, again, the sky is falling. And sure, they haven't won a World Series in quite some time. But that was 13 years ago?
Yeah, exactly.
Not 54 years ago.
Right.
So... Yeah, you gotta punch the ticket at some point.
You really do.
Yeah.
I mean, and they've almost stopped saying it, right? When Shanahan first got here, he was talking about how the idea was to return the franchise to its rightful place, right? Which was, guess what? Hoisting the Stanley Cup, holding parades.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And you haven't heard that so much lately.
No, it's funny. Like, even doing the math, I think trips people up, myself included. Like, for the longest time, it was like I could have told you in a millisecond. Yeah, it's been 43 years, 47. It's been 50. Now I'm like, okay, what is it again? 67, carry the 3.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, what is it again? I forgot. I think a part of that is like we're not even talking about it anymore around the team. Like, they're not even going to mention it because, 67, as opposed to that being a celebration, it's become kind of a harsh reality. It's become somewhat insulting, really, when you hear that number. You're like, ew, we know what that means.
Yeah. But it goes to show, like, in a lot of ways, you got to enjoy the moments when a team is building, right? Like, that's why if Masai Ujiri could go back, like, he wishes right now that he had a team that was like that Lowry, DeRozan team going up against Brooklyn way back in the day, right? Like, like on the road to being something.
Right.
Like,
you could feel it. You could sense where it was going.
Like, if you're not a contender, that's the best place to be, right?
Yes.
And so the Leafs had that run, and now it's like, well, we're all sitting there tapping our watches going, yeah, we knew you were young once and you were promising once, and now you're just disappointing. Like, I think that's what the Raptors have got to think about, right? Like, how do you get back to being a team on the rise?
Right. Young, promising, energetic, fun, accepting that it's not about a championship, but you're chipping away at moving in that direction.
Yeah, and they got to make those moves because I don't, like, to stagnate is to die, man, in this league. And, it's and you're not bad enough to get the number one in the 2024 draft by a lot of accounts isn't one you wanted to be tanking for anyways. So, but you wonder what they're going to do because, if you look at the roster right now, you're putting a lot of faith in a new coach to think a lot is going to change when you've lost Fred VanVleet and, you've made a few additions. I mean, Dennis Schroeder's not nothing, but he ain't a franchise changer.
No, he's not, for sure. Steve Phillips coming up. Jays, Reds tonight. Barrios on the mound, into Bassett, into Ryu. How do we set up this weekend? What does he make of Bichette? Not coming back tonight. Springer out of the lineup tonight. That more still to come with Steve. OverDrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 2. OverDrive continues, brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. How about those Elks? The Edmonton Elks. Ever since we started riding that wave. They covered the number last week. They covered it last night, and they won outright.
How about that?
They're back. We're back in Edmonton. I love it.
They're back on the road, not in Edmonton, hey. Still haven't won in Edmonton.
Listen, beggars can't be choosers, Dave.
Okay.
When you don't win, period, it doesn't matter if this is, Hamilton, Edmonton, Timbuktu. You take your win, and you absolutely stuff it.
You're right.
You take it happily.
You're right.
So, big win, big cover last night for the Elks. I didn't have the stones to play them on the money line. My best bets, I took the points last night.
Did you?
But the grappler was pushing me. He said, take it, money line. They're going to get a win at some point.
Got to win eventually.
Yep, and they sure did. Got to be tough for the Tabbies. Oh. That's a tough one to chew on. You lose to the Elks right now, that is really, really difficult. But Dave Naylor in a couple hours on that and more. Jays, Cincy tonight. Here's Steve Phillips, our TSN MLB analyst. What's going on, Steve?
Hey, guys. Good to be with you. How are you?
Yeah, we're doing pretty well. We're looking at the lineup tonight. A couple things stick out. Bichette not activated. We assume he'll be activated tomorrow. But Springer not playing tonight. They were off yesterday, off Monday. They're off again next Monday. What do you make of Bo not returning tonight? And when you consider that, the fact that Springer's not playing tonight too?
Yeah, so, the Bo part of it, I mean, that's just part of what the load management people are managing, doctors managing, and trying to buy an extra day. And so, I can understand it. I mean, I would love to have seen him get in. If he was able to play yesterday, I was hoping he'd be able to play today. If he got an off day Monday, I'd work him in. But, okay, so Saturday's all right. The Springer part's hard to understand, and it makes me think when something doesn't make sense, there's something I don't know. I mean, that's how I always look at it. Coming off of an off day, I'm looking at it thinking, well, why would he not be in the lineup today unless he's dinged up in a way that makes us wonder what's going on, that he's not feeling right. He's there's something that's bothering him, and they're trying to give him an extra day to deal with something. So that would be my guess is that, and they're probably not going to share it, but because he's not going to go in the IL, it's just something that's bothering him that they're going to buy him a day would be my guess with all of it.
No, that's a fair point, Steve. But, I mean, what's your level of concern with Springer? Because, look, if he's nursing something, maybe that explains the fact that he hasn't been the leadoff guy they hoped he would be, the force they hoped he could be, although he's had some moments of late. But and maybe that explains why, he hasn't been that. But on the other hand, what does it say for the Final 40 here and the playoffs beyond? I mean, this is a guy who's got a long history of, having difficulty staying healthy.
Yeah, I mean, it's one that, look, I look at him as having, of the active players today, he's one of the best postseason performers we have in the game. I mean, he's that good, that pedigree. And so whatever they have to do to get him right, whatever they have to do to get him healthy for October. Now, the trade-off tonight is they're playing Kevin Biggio in the outfield, and Kevin Biggio is having among the best at-bats on the Blue Jays lineup here over the last week or so. His quality of his at-bats have been excellent. So, I think it's reasonable to question the Springer part of it, but I don't mind Biggio getting some at-bats right now in that moment. Kiermaier back in the lineup, coming back from that laceration, so he's in center field as well. And another day of Espinal at short instead of DeYoung, which I get. DeYoung was like 3 for 44 at the plate with 18 strikeouts. And so, they're trying to find some offense there. And maybe, it's the balance of the left-handed bat in the mix today that they're trying to look for as well. So, I'm with you on it. I think Springer's a critical guy, and I think that they've got to manage him in a way that he's ready for the stretch run in the month of September and October. And if it means a day right now, and John Schneider knows what's going on, the training staff knows, then they're going to make a decision. Good luck. They're going to try to win tonight. And so if they think there's something that is reason for him not to be in there, it's got to have some completely understandable logic behind it.
Well, it's got to make Schneider, sleep a little bit easier at night. Even with Bichette out, they go 8-7. Now Springer's a little bit banged up. You do have Kiermaier has been activated. He'll be back available this weekend. But with the staff being as dominant as it's been, ideally you're still looking for run production, and clearly you're going to need that at some point. But even with Bo out, even with Springer out, even with Vladdy not crushing the baseball, and we've talked about that extensively, they're still winning ball games, and I get the impression Schneider feels confident they can win ball games simply because of how well the staff has been set up and how well they've been performing recently.
Yeah, and you've got a fully rested bullpen today as well. Coming into it, and with reinforcements coming in, and I didn't see whether they activated Trevor Richard today or not, but I know that they did. Okay, he's on the verge too, and I know Chad Green not far away either from joining the staff for the first time this year. So they're getting reinforcements, and I think that's a good thing for them. I also like that Chapman's back in the lineup. The inflammation on that finger that he injured in the weight room seems like it's better to be able to grip the bat. That's critical because defense at third base when he's not in there is just different. And here's the thing. Other guys don't make plays that are really tough plays to make, but he makes those plays, and he makes them look easy, and we kind of take them for granted. Then when you see other guys kicking around a little bit, as Espinal did a couple nights ago at third, it really makes you understand the value of what Matt Chapman is. So it's good to have him back in the lineup today. And Chapman would be a guy I'd focus on to think that he may go deep in this game today. A couple days off, feeling refreshed and rested. I think he's a guy that I think can have a big day tonight.
Tell us what we need to know about this Cincinnati Reds team, Steve. Obviously, one of the, I would say, surprise stories and one of the feel-good stories of the Major League Baseball season with the emergence of Ellie De La Cruz and, good old Joey Votto, Etobicoke's finest, still hanging in at age 39 as the team's spiritual leader in a lot of ways. What do you make of their success, and what do the Jays have to fear tonight and beyond?
No, they're a really fun team. I mean, they've got the first team in baseball history with 3 rookies with double-digit home runs and double-digit stolen bases. I mean, they are so athletic. And they're led off. TJ Friedel's a fiery, spunky leadoff guy in center field. Matt McClain is an absolute stud who has come up. He's playing second base in the game tonight. We know a lot about Ellie De La Cruz. He's the guy we've talked a lot about, but McClain is a player. 13 home runs, 11 stolen bases for him. De La Cruz, 10 homers, 19 stolen bases. De La Cruz has been struggling a little bit lately, but he always does something in the game that lights you up. He's got one of the strongest arms in the infield you're going to see. Spencer Steer. How about Spencer Steer and Encarnacion Strand are 2 players that Cincinnati got last year in the Malley trade, sending him over to Minnesota. And he has been, these 2 guys are players, man, really, really good players. Steer has been outstanding all year. He can play first base and third. Encarnacion Strand DH, and so Votto in the lineup, which I like. Votto in the lineup against the Blue Jays. I think there's always that level of motivation. Tyler Stevenson is an outstanding offensive two-way catcher. Will Benson You better hope a fight doesn't break out because the Jays don't have anybody who can match up with Will Benson. He is jacked. I mean, he is ginormous. And so, their everyday lineup is loaded with absolute stud, 5-tool players and exciting young guys. They're young, and so they make some mistakes. At times they can be a little reckless. The pitching is behind the position players right now. Kennedy on the mound has not had a lot of experience this year, and so we'll see how far he goes into the game and how they're going to piece this together. They're waiting to get back Hunter Green and Nick Rodolo into that rotation, but they've got one of the fine young rookies in Andrew Abbott, a left-handed pitcher who's fantastic. I don't think the Jays are going to see. I think he pitched on last night, and then they've got just some out, and then Graham Ashcraft, another young pitcher with a really good arm, who I think the Jays will see during this series. So the Reds are a good team. It's going to be a fun series, and two teams are loaded with young talent.
Well, the Angels are adding young talent here, Steve. This is a wild story, yet incredibly predictable which team would pull this off. One of the goofiest teams in pro sports, the LA Angels, because they're calling up first baseman Nolan Schanuel, who they took with the 11th overall pick 6 weeks ago. Not in the 2019 draft, not in the 2020 draft. 6 weeks ago, they drafted this kid. They're calling him up. I saw Jeff Passan tweet this out. According to ESPN Stats and Info, the last U.S.-born player to debut within 40 days of being drafted, Texas pitcher Jerry Don Gleaton in 1979. The last position player, Jays catcher Brian Milner in 78. What the hell were the Jays doing in 78? So the Angels, they're already done. They're 7 games out of a wild card. Ever since they went all in, they've absolutely puked all over themselves. And now they're going to call this kid up 6 weeks after he got drafted. Can you possibly explain this for us?
Yeah, so, it's odd, right? It's bizarre. It's not a common move. So what I make out of it is that they're trying to figure out whether they get a quick answer on whether he could be an everyday first baseman next year. Because if they're going to sign Ohtani, they can't be involved in signing a free agent first baseman. They've got C.J. Cron they traded for. And so I think they're looking at it trying to figure out, okay, if we can go with Neto, the young shortstop, who was in last year's draft that they called up earlier this year at short, and we can play this kid at first, Schanuel, then maybe we can put rookies on the field and afford Ohtani. That would be my guess, that there's some part of this where it's showcasing for Ohtani, the young talent, but also trying to get answers whether they think this kid could be an answer for them next year at first base.
Whew.
Yeah, it seems risky, doesn't it, Steve? Like, what is if you're sort of looking at the downside of this, the downside potential of bringing up a kid this soon in a season that's this lost? Like, what kind of goes through your mind?
Yeah, I think that one, if you're doing it because you think you're going to make a run and you want this kid to be the savior, it's so unfair to the young man. And two, the impact on an individual where, you call him up, he's not ready. He's not ready to be a big league hitter. And I don't care what he does tonight. He can go 4 for 4. He's still not going to be ready to be a big league hitter. At some point, they're going to expose his weaknesses. But I think that you can set back the development of a young player and lose his confidence and lose his abilities. And you can go up there and get worried and scared and doubtful. And so I just, it's just not the normal way to do things. But, they don't do things normally there anyway. So, I don't get it. It doesn't feel like it's a healthy thing mentally for a young player to do. I mean, certainly the kid's like, sure, I'll go to the big leagues if you want me to go. But in his mind, he's got to be thinking, am I ready for this? Am I really ready for this? Mm-hmm. But, we'll see what he does. But it's a bold move for sure.
Yeah, it absolutely is. Jays Reds tonight in Cincinnati. Enjoy that. Enjoy your weekend, buddy. We'll do it again real soon.
You got it, guys. My pleasure.
Steve Phillips, our TSN MLB analyst. Like, this is the Angels.
Yeah.
This is what they do. And Steve, I understand where Steve's coming at it from, like from a managerial standpoint, trying to get a read. But you can get a read if the guy stays in Double-A.
That's what I mean.
You can get a read over the course of winter ball, maybe into spring training. You still have 6 weeks left in the season.
Right.
This just screams of desperation. And, of course, the Angels are going to do it.
And there's something to be said for not fast-tracking guys, no matter how good they are, no matter how good they appear. And as Steve says, no matter how he may perform great. We may be watching the highlights tonight, and this guy goes 4 for 4 with a couple of home runs, for all we know, right? I mean, who knows? Mm-hmm. But even if you look at the guy, look at the cautionary tale of Alek Manoah. Fast-track through the minors, gets to the Major League Baseball, and is a sensation as a rookie. And it hasn't gone that great, right? In the offing, right? So, and I'm not saying that was because he was fast tracked, but there are people that have said, look, maybe he skipped a couple steps along the way. Maybe it was too fast, too soon for him. And it's easy to say that in retrospect. We certainly weren't saying it when he was, a Cy Young candidate and when he was dominating the All-Star game last season. We weren't saying that. I'm not saying we were. But if you look at the sort of arc of guys, there's something to be said for the old over-ripening in the minors before you bring them up.
Yeah, I think that goes a long way. And again, that's what well-oiled machines would do.
Yes.
Well-run organizations would do that, but the Angels are not. The Angels are incredibly desperate for, they want to keep Ohtani. They're doing everything they possibly can. I don't see, if I'm Ohtani, this makes me turn my back on you even more.
Yes.
Like, this makes me realize how big of a joke this place is. Where
it
it's
has
like,
to.
You drafted this guy 6 weeks ago, and he's in the lineup tonight? What
exactly.
are we doing here?
Especially when you come from that, the Japanese culture where, they have such a reverence for the developmental cycle and experience.
Right.
And, you work your way up.
26.
Exactly. Yeah. You don't get anything handed to you early in those cultures, right? You're right. It's if they're meaning this to impress Ohtani and try and keep Ohtani, they've got it exactly backwards.
Yeah, I think it's the opposite for sure. Eddie Olczyk in about 20 minutes, Kings Plate this weekend. We'll start looking ahead to that. We'll get Eddie to cap the race and cap other races, see which ponies we should maybe keep our eye on. Get into a number of things with Eddie as well. So we got Eddie Olczyk coming up. Dave Naylor still to come. Keegan Matheson from Cincinnati. Dave Feschuk's in here from the Star. I'm Brian Hayes. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 2. All right, Eddie O coming up. You got something at 5:30, I think, that's going to be interesting. I'm looking forward to seeing your list on this.
Mm-hmm.
And to come up with 4 players, 25 and under in the Big Four sports, that have a shot at reaching the Mount Rushmore of their respective sport.
Right.
Right. So NHL, NFL, MLB, NBA, you could have 1 from each. You could have 4 from the same league.
Mm-hmm.
Players 25 and under. There's a lot of great young players, great young talent in all 4 leagues. And we're going to put together a 4-pack, each of us, of which player we think has a chance at pursuing that Mount Rushmore in their respective sports. So more on that at 5:30. See a big development on Twitter, although it's supposed to be X, but no one calls it
Nobody
X.
calls it X.
And if you call it X, people won't understand what the hell you're talking about.
Right, because you can't say, I sent an X.
Right, exactly.
I put it up on X. I X'd you, or
No.
Nobody. Even in the newspaper business, you would occasionally say, blah 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 tweeted. You can't say blah 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 X'd.
No, you can't.
It doesn't have the same ring.
It just makes no sense that it's X now as opposed to Twitter. When Twitter has been built up, it's an international brand that everyone understands. It's a part of the language.
Spent $44 billion on it. The guy spends $44 billion on the brand and changes the brand.
Yeah. You know how hard that is to establish that? It's so difficult to do that. And anyway, the news today on X or Twitter is that Elon and company are going to get rid of the block option. So blocking people will no longer be an option.
Right.
And I don't see the purpose of that. I'm not sure how this benefits anybody but trolls and annoying people.
Oh, yeah.
On Twitter. But he's obviously got some plan for this, that he thinks it needs to be completely open and accessible for everyone, to everyone.
I guess.
That obviously is what he's thinking, is some, community consciousness. I don't know. He's labeled it in some fashion. But I'd love to know who has blocked the most amount of accounts on Twitter. Like, there's got to be someone out there that's blocked 10,000 people or 100,000 people. Could be Noodles, as Grappler just pointed out in my ear. It is something Noodles really enjoys doing, is blocking people on Twitter.
Well, and I understand the sentiment. I try not to block people just because it seems a little harsh. But I will mute people that just annoy me. Like, they just tweet too much. I don't like seeing their stuff in my timeline. They don't add value to my life. In fact, they subtract value from my life. They take away time. Me reading their crappy X's or tweets, whatever we're calling them these days. But I guess he's saying you can still block people in your DMs.
Right, but who care? Who has DMs anyway? Like exactly. I guess DMs are there, but I don't use my DMs, and they're not open to the public. So what does that do for me?
Wow.
Like sometimes I don't block a ton either, but if someone is looking to get blocked, like sure I'll block. Like I don't care. It didn't affect my life.
Right.
I'll just block you and move on.
If you're going to be
like,
beyond rude, it's just like
exactly. Like if someone says something that's so ridiculously troll-worthy and trying to get your attention to be annoying or aggravating and basically trying to get blocked, it's like fine.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I'll grant you your wish. Block.
That's what it is. Like I don't mind if you disagree with
me. It doesn't matter.
You disagree with me. I don't care. I'm not going to block
all
you for
day,
that.
Of course.
But if you get kind of mean and rude and ugly, if you get
unnecessarily ugly,
it doesn't seem to make sense to me.
Yes.
Like what are we talking about here? It's not a nice conversation anymore.
I wonder how the X feels about X, right?
Yeah.
Like the X is open today. It's rocking probably downtown.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
I guess they're glad that they're the EX, right?
Exactly. I guess
EX.
they would suggest that they're the EX as opposed to, but everyone just calls it the X.
Yeah, there's so many things
that
have like it. Why did he choose X?
I don't know. I guess he's always been obsessed with that. Like that's always been his thing. Something about the letter X. Didn't he name his kid like X H2 3? Like some ridiculous handle. All right, hour 2 coming up. Eddie Olchuk will join us. We'll get to our 25 and under Mount Rushmore at 5:30. Dave Feschuk's here. I'm Brian Hayes. OverDrive continues. TSN 1050 and on the TSN app.